Right, welcome to this part of the show. And as you know, this is called Ordinary People. And as always, we have somebody who's doing extraordinary things in the community. Now, this week, our guest is Njambi McGrath, and she has a very, very powerful story. But we'll just tell you a little bit about her first. Njambi is a Kenyan-born, based in the UK, comedian and actor. She was born in the central province of Kenya, where she spent most of her childhood growing up on a farm during her formative years before going to boarding school. And as I know it, most Kenyans go to boarding school, but we're going to ask Njambi about her experience in boarding school. Although she hated boarding school, it equipped her to become self-reliant. Njambi moved to London in her late teens. She did part of her degree in IT in New York and is now married to an Englishman, and they have 2 daughters. She also has a diploma in higher education, and in her spare time, she enjoys reading about African mythology, folklore, and history, especially her tribe, and I can't pronounce it. How do you pronounce it?
The Gikuyu people.
Gikuyu in
Gikuyu.
Kenya. She also enjoys travel and swimming.
That's right.
Njambi, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Is there something you want to say first, Iola?
No, just welcome. So excited to have you on the show. Obviously reading about you. I've seen you on different platforms as well, and it's just amazing to have you here with us on Colourful. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, at such short notice as well. I know I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, but stuff happens and all that stuff. So tell us a little bit about Njambi. I know you come from Kenya. What's your family composition? Are you the oldest, the youngest? Are you the only child? Why did they send you to boarding school?
So I am the 4th child of my family. Basically, my father had 5 children with my mother, and he had another 5 children with someone else because he liked to be fair. Why did they send me to boarding school? Because when the British arrived in Kenya, in Africa, they established boarding schools because that is the easiest and the quickest way to detribalize people. So when you take children and send them off to boarding school, it means they don't learn about who they are, their tribe, or their cultural identity. So within 70 years, the Gikuyu people lost their culture.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff. I didn't even know that. I thought I just thought that you went to boarding school because it was a better opportunity. Like over here, we have grammar schools. So I thought maybe it was a better opportunity, a better learning opportunity and experience for you. So it's because they didn't want you to learn about your culture.
Precisely. So if you look at the natives of Canada, even in America, Canada particularly is very big, where they forcibly took people's children and took them to boarding school where they were educated by priests. So they did the same in Kenya. Although by the time, obviously I was going to school, we'd already had our independence. But just because you've had your independence, things don't just stop there. People just, you get your independence and then people carry on from there. So when my father took me to boarding school, it's because it had become the done thing.
Yeah.
It was now the done thing. We had, but we didn't know. The thing is, people in Kenya, in Africa, don't actually know the psychology of boarding school. The boarding school is to basically make people lose their connection with their tribe. And so, for me, and especially when I started writing the book, I found myself completely overpowered by sorrow, by how much they took away from us. They took our sense of identity, and actually to this day, this is noticeable in Kenya. People suffer from a lot of low self-esteem and not knowing who they are, basically, and especially the Gikuyu people. The Gikuyu particularly, because when the British came to Kenya, they sent a surveyor who went around the country and they identified the central province of Kenya because it was the most fertile. It is the most fertile place on earth, he declared.
On Earth?
On Earth, he said. Well,
not just in Kenya.
No, probably in Africa, but I don't know. But his declaration, his name was Sir Charles Eliot, he declared that this is easily the most fertile place on earth. And so he declared that was perfect for British white people. And unfortunate for my tribe, the Gikuyu people, is that we were vegan farmers. And therefore we lived by the land. We lived by vegetables. And so when the British came, they kicked out my tribe. They deported people from my tribe, and they deported them to arid areas like where the Maasai live. The problem with that is the Maasai are nomadic. Also, they eat meat and they drink blood. That's all they live by. They drink blood, they eat meat, and they drink milk. For us, we are vegan. So how are we supposed to mix and live together?
Yeah.
We are unable, because we are farmers, we were unable to live. And this is why, so they took the Gikuyu people and they built reserves for them. So they deported them to reserves, native reserves. And the children were forcefully, sent to boarding school. Missionaries, they're supposed to be spreading good news, and their role was really to detribalize the people so that people can lose connection with their tribe, basically. Because when people are united, my tribe was very united. It was a very strong tribe, and they destroyed the tribe to this day.
So what kind of things is it that you felt that you've missed out on?
Everything, all the rituals.
Give us an example. We're British, we were born into this society, so we don't know the African culture and African tribes tradition. So just give us a few examples, please.
Okay. For example, the Gikuyu people believe that at the beginning of everything, there was Gai, God. And Gai created Gikuyu and Mombi. The first man on earth was Gikuyu, and his wife was Mombi. And he gave them a beautiful garden in a place near the equator in Kenya called Mukuruwanyagadaga. And in this garden, they had 9 daughters. And those 9 daughters are the 9 matriarchs of the 9 clans of the Gikuyu people. And so we used to, and we believed that Gai lives on Mount Kenya, except we didn't call it Mount Kenya. The British came and trashed it and called it Mount Kenya. We called it Kirinyaga. So when we worshipped, we faced Kirinyaga because we believe that's where God lives, and the snow that is on Mount Kenya is his bed. So every time we used to pray there, facing Kirinyaga, and our land was surrounded by 4 holy mountains. They were renamed Abadeas after the head of the Royal Geographical Society in London. But Abadea was there. The holy mountain is a residence for God. So we used to worship this God. And actually, we used to sacrifice. We used to, if you look at our tribal norms and tribal customs, especially when it comes to spirituality, it is not very dissimilar to a lot of the practices in the Bible. So we were very spiritual. Also, we used to acknowledge our ancestors, because our ancestors were the guiding morals for us. So we believed like you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, or whatever, because our ancestors are watching you. So for example, before you ate, you splash a little, you put a little crumbs on the floor for the ancestors. You splash a little drink for the ancestors, and all of that stopped. The British stopped all of that. And what they did was they said that our God doesn't exist, and they actually lied. They said we were pagan, but we were never pagan. And so what they did is they forced people to, because we believed that our God said that he doesn't want to be worshipped in temples made by man's hands. So they have to be forces of nature. So we had very, very old, ancient trees that people have worshipped in for hundreds of years. And the British forced us to cut down the trees, which was very traumatic. And so we were forced to worship in the church. So even to this day, like when we worship in the church, people will have the iconography of Christianity. So they'll have Jesus and all the people. But like when we pray, we still pray to Gai, but it's all convoluted. So people, it's all mixed up. Yeah.
Iola?
Wow, that's so interesting. You sound extremely passionate about that, and I imagine a lot of that's also shared in your critically acclaimed book, which we'll get onto. But so when you moved over here to the UK, how did you find that transition? I know that you had quite a traumatic childhood. I don't know if you want to speak to that. I know that's in the book. But how did you, in terms of the culture, you sound very passionate when you speak, and I can feel your energy. How did you transition from that warmth, that rich culture, for all that upheaval, and then being moved with your family here? how did you transition, and did you take any elements of that traditional, is it Kikuyu culture, to the UK?
It is when you leave your home and you're going to live somewhere else, no matter how much more advanced they are, you still suffer loss. It's loss of everything, loss of the smells of cooking, loss of the food, loss of the language that you speak, because this is what makes a person a person. And then everything is different. Everybody is different. Like when we arrived in London, London is very cold. Not only just the temperature, but also the people. You know, their mannerism is just sort of. So I remember there was a time I thought to myself, I'll never smile. Was
that after you went on the tube?
Like everything, you know, just is seriously. And I think many people, especially many people from Africa, will perhaps maybe identify, not even from Africa, even from the Caribbean or wherever, they will make a connection that when you come here, you spend so long adjusting to being here. And then when like I go to Kenya, I become really critical of things. So I'm never happy. So when I'm here now, like
I'm grateful.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm only joking.
But this is it. The thing is, then you become you're the citizen of nowhere. So like you don't really feel like you belong here. And then you go to Kenya, you have changed. You're not what you used to be, and then you feel you don't belong there, and people know that you don't belong there because they can see your mannerisms,
right?
Especially with my accent, people think you're trying to be British, and I was like, yeah.
You're trying to be British, but when you went to your boarding school, were you speaking your cultural language, or were you speaking English?
It was banned. You were not allowed in Africa. If you speak your native language, they beat you in school.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's just like in slavery days.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, the people who are perpetuating this are Black Kenyans, but because they learn, and this is the thing, it's like the abuser, the abused becomes the abuser. So these people were beaten. They were told, your language is dirty, your language is horrible, English is civilized, that's what you must speak. And to this day, people still see themselves as that. So a person in Kenya, if they speak in English and it's like broken English, people are like, oh my God, like, look at that, like speaking broken English. But at least they can speak. It's if the British can't speak, you know, most any language, most of them. But
it's true.
Yeah.
No matter where we go in the world, we expect people to speak English.
But you see, like Kenyans, most Kenyan, like an average Kenyan, will speak 3 languages.
How many languages do you have in your culture?
In my culture, we have just the Gikuyu language. But in Kenya, we have 44 different tribes, and each of the languages are fundamentally different. It's like Russians and English, completely different. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So tell us about your childhood growing up. So we know you were abused by your father. So what happened on the farm? So
my dad was very violent. He was a very shrewd businessman, very violent, but incredible in some ways. And when he lost his temper, he lost it. He could kill you and not even know that he's actually killing you. So he used to beat us pretty badly. So in my book, I talk about 2 beatings that I got. So one of them was with my younger brother, because my sister, he had bought my sister this Timex watch, and the glass broke, and my sister said, I don't know how it broke. It was in the bathroom, it fell and glass was smashed. And he called me, he said, did you break the watch? I said, no, I didn't. And he said to my brother, did you break the watch? And he said, no, I didn't. And he said, it must have been us. Me, he said, you, because you're jealous. My brother, because you're curious. Yeah. So, and you know, well, how old were we? I don't know, maybe 8 and 9. So he sent us outside to go and get a stick, as you always do. You had to go and get your own stick, and it has to be a
beating stick.
Your beating stick, and it had to be strong enough so that because if he has to go and get it for you, he will get like a log or something. So we got our sticks, and that day he bait us because you get beaten on your hands, and then he moved to our back. He moved to every part of our bodies. Like I say in my book, my brother and I, we lay there on the floor, just wailing like wounded animals. We thought that he was going to kill us. And it's only when the workman intervened, he came in, he was knocking on the door. That's when he intervened. And so that was a fight that I will never forget. But the one that changed my life forever was when he came home with his new girlfriend, because by then my mother had left because he nearly killed her. He chased her with an axe. He had beaten her up so badly she ran away in her underwear, running across the countryside, and somebody gave her a lift and took her all the way to my grandmother's, but she was pretty badly beaten. Her teeth were loose, and like literally he could have killed her. And he chased her with an axe. That if he'd caught her, that would have been the end of her. And that beating, actually, we suspect is what caused my mother to have Parkinson's, because we don't know, we can't prove that, but but then, so my mother had already gone because she feared and we feared that he was going to kill her. So it was just us children.
Did she tell you that she was going? Or
she literally, she ran. She was being chased, and she was,
oh, I see.
Yeah, she just ran in her underwear. Didn't take anything with her.
So did you children witness her being beaten at the time?
Not that time. So that I knew about it because she came to my boarding school. So this is, I talk about this in my book. She turns up at my boarding school, and I hear a knock at the door, and she's standing there, black eyes, teeth swollen. She looked like she'd been run over by a car. And it was horrendous. And even I told her, Mom, you can never ever go back home. But then, so then my beating was, so he come home, and he's angry about something. And because you're always getting accused, and we are always denying, because you're also, don't do this. I was like, it's not me. And because you know where this is going. I genuinely, I didn't know what I had done. And so he, next thing I remember, he's attacking me. And then I see something coming and lands on my head, and I black out. Yeah. And so the next time I wake up, I'm all alone. It's pitch black. And in my state, I just think, I have to run. He's probably he's going to get the axe, and I need to run. So that's when I get out. It's pitch black, and I begin walking. And I just walk through the coffee plantation because I did take my suitcase, my big tin blue suitcase, and I just walk, and I walk. I don't know how long I was walking for, and I noticed headlights behind me, and I just kept walking. I could have run, but I didn't. I just kept walking, and two men get out of the car, and they take my suitcase, and they say, "Get in the car," and we get in the car.
Wasn't you scared to get in the car?
Yeah.
Was you scared to get in the car?
So they told me to get in the car. So they took my suitcase.
So was you frightened to get in the car?
At that particular time, no. I couldn't engage.
Okay.
So I mean, out at night in the countryside, as having escaped my father, I think for me, my biggest fear was where I had come from. Where I was going, I didn't care.
Okay.
But I didn't think of, and you don't. I was 13. I was 13 years old.
You were literally, sounds like, in the flight mode, the fight or flight. You were in the flight mode. You were like running on adrenaline and just carrying on, trying to escape, basically.
Yeah. And I'm wearing a night dress. I'm wearing my night dress. I'm bleeding. And they just take my suitcase, and they say, get in the car, and I get in the car, and we drive off. Obviously, I don't want to say too much just in case people want to read my book, but anything could have happened to me that night, but none of that mattered to me, because where I'd come from was just too harrowing. There was no safety where I had run away from. And again, if anybody reads my book, those men didn't turn out to be as horrible as it could have turned out.
Where did they take you?
So they took me to, they asked me where I was going. I told them Buddhist school, and they dropped me. They just dropped me in the region near where I told them, but that's where I went to find my mum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I read somewhere that you likened your father to a cross between Dalai Lama and Stalin, which are obviously two completely opposing identities. What were you able to forgive him? Because I'm assuming from that comparison that there was a side of him that was a father, and in terms of a normal relationship. How was it with him afterwards?
Well, there was no afterwards.
Right.
So I go to my mom, and so much happens, and then we come to London, and I fall in love. I get married. Yeah.
So hold on. So how do you get to London? So you're a 13-year-old.
Oh yeah,
You've run away. You've run away. You've gone back to your school.
Mom. Yeah.
So what happened? You grew up. You stayed in Kenya. You developed a relationship with your mother.
Yeah. So I stayed with my mom, and then we came to London.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't want to give too much away from the book so that people
can reading it. Listen, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter what you give away. The more you give away, the more interest you'll gain for your book. You understand? People are going to buy it. They're going to buy it. So don't hold back on the juicy pieces. The juicy pieces is what's going to make them buy your book. Okay?
Yeah. So I mean, fast forward. I'm fasting forward because I went to my mother. My mother was broken, and I was broken. So we were both broken, and then, but you find the strength. You have to find the strength. So we, fast forward now. We moved to London, and we moved to London, and by this time I'm just I'm a young woman, then start uni, and then I
hold on before you started uni. Tell me a bit about America, because you've done some of your IT degree in America before you come to England. Yeah.
No, I did. I started uni here, and then I went on a student exchange program.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. So I did an exchange program in America. So that was I've written a whole show about that. So I fall in love with a guy, and we get married, and we have children, and I have buried, because the thing is, when something like that happens to you, automatically you want to move away from it. You don't want to dwell on it. Isn't this what we are told?
Yeah.
Move on.
Did you ever get any? Sorry, did you ever receive any counselling? Because obviously, anything like that when you came here?
No, I didn't even know. I was traumatized. This is the most ridiculous thing about it, because when you escape, and this is the thing, when people escape from something, you think that you're fine. You think that you're fine, and I thought I was fine. If you had asked me, was I traumatized? I knew there at the back of my mind there was that incident, but I pushed it down and fooled myself to think that I was fine. And it's only all of this, everything that I'm telling you now, the reason it came out is this. My brother decided to get married.
Okay.
And invited our father. And that sparked the downward spiral for me. I kind of just went,
right.
I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So I became very confused. I was like, I can't go to a wedding. And, I wanted to go for my brother's wedding because he's lovely, but I couldn't face him. And in the end, I decided I have to talk to him. And I'm spending months just going around. What will I do? How will I talk to him? Just the whole thing. And then and then finally I decided, fine, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to ask him why he did whatever he did to me. And we meet up. I said, we're going to meet up, and we meet up. And when we meet up, I had you know what, you whatever goes through your mind, you think he spent all these years being so sorry. He spent these years just whatever, and then we meet up. And I was thinking, because I thought, well, I'm doing well, you know, I want him to see that I'm doing okay. So I say, we're going to meet in this posh restaurant and I'm paying. And I say, I'm paying.
Girl power.
Look at me now. Look at me now.
I'm paying. So I go there and I'm waiting, and then I see him, and then I see his wife, and then I see her sister, and then I see all their children.
What?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
He was committed to her then.
Yeah.
What was going through your head at that time? Because presumably, did you expect him to turn up on his own? I'm assuming that.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. That we would sit down and we would talk. And then, of course, there was no talking. Of course, there was there was nothing. There was no talking. So then it smashed in the box where I kept all those memories.
Yeah.
And I began to get very, you know, just completely went to a really dark place. And so the wedding happens, and we go to the wedding, and the wedding was nice, you know, it was my brother's wedding. But then now I have lost my peace. I can't find inner peace, you know. I was living in a happy marriage with my daughters they are still very beautiful, and life was so lovely for me. But I completely lost my peace. I couldn't find my peace.
I'm so sorry. So just let you take a moment.
Yeah, so I completely lost my peace. And so I thought the only way I could get it back was if I could only talk to my dad. And so then I tried to reconnect with him, and I think I'm going to reconnect with him, and I am going to I am going to ask him, why did you do this to me? And then I get a phone call. He died.
Oh no.
Oh wow.
So that's where I was left. And then
so you got this book has been birthed from that. You had to get it out.
Yeah. So then I thought, okay, so I came back from his funeral, and I was very, very upset. I was like, my whole world had just been smashed out. And so I talked to this guy. He works in comedy, or he's been involved in comedy for a long time, and he says, you're obviously in so much pain, why don't you write a show about it? And I said, I can't write a show about it. I just can't. What do you, I mean, I'm just gonna be nervous. And he said, you'll be surprised. And because I said to him, I'm just gonna write a book because I want people to know just what a horrible man my father was. I just want to shout so that each and every man and woman and child in the whole wide world will know what a horrible person my father was. And then when I start writing the book, and then I think, hang on, who was he? Who was my father? Hang on. Because so you sit down and start writing, it's like, he was a horrible man, he was evil, nasty man. It's like, who was he? It's like, I don't know. So I started to do research. I started to do research, and this is where it all came out. And in looking for my dad, I found my mother. So it turns out that between 1952 and 1960, the people of my tribe, because they had lost their land, they were completely dispossessed. They so they'd lost everything, and they couldn't survive, they couldn't live, they couldn't eat. Many of them were starving to death. And so they organized themselves and started an uprising, which was called the Mau Mau terrorists. But it was an uprising because they want a bit of land, they want to survive. Whereas you would get like a white man in Kenya, he would own 100,000 acres of land with his wife and maybe son. You get all these people who have no food. They're scavengers basically. So we started fighting for independence. And what the British did was they took every single person from my tribe and they put them in a concentration camp. So they separated the men and the women. So my mother, when she was 8, she and all the women of our tribe were put in a concentration camp, and the men separated. Mm-hmm. So the men were they were tortured, they were castrated, they were sodomized. They used to put sand in their anuses. And what they did to men, they did to the women. The women, they killed them by poisoning them in their vaginas. So they would put chilies and kerosene in their vaginas, and that would poison them slowly. So from 1952 and 1960, that's what happened to my tribe. And it's no wonder my father was traumatized. My father was traumatized, and they never had any counseling. They were just left to carry on with their lives. So no matter how much my father tried to be a normal human, he couldn't be a normal human because his mother was killed. So he was a street child, like many street children in Kenya. And this is the legacy. This is a British legacy. Yeah.
But yet still they called you terrorists. It's just crazy how they use this language to demonize and criminalize the original people of the land, just so that they can take advantage of their acres and their resources. Wow. So your father was a product of that. He was a product of that uprising. And so that same old adage, hurt people. Have you, in learning that, how has that changed your mindset? You've learned a lot about your dad. I understand he was quite an educated person. I think it was 5 languages I read that he and he was, like I said, you compared him to Dalai Lama and Stalin, and that just shows that you humanized him in that sense. I mean, I obviously haven't read the book yet, but how do you feel now, like, in terms of, I don't want to have any spoilers, but how do you feel now about him in terms of knowing that element of his life had a massive impact on him?
Just sad. He never had a chance. My parents never had a chance, Their chances were taken away for empowerment of others, for the legacy of the British Empire. And these are the tears that we will have, and yet our suffering is never accepted. They have refused to accept our suffering, and all the suffering that they inflicted on the Africans, they just refused to accept it. When Gordon Brown went to Kenya, he said Britain is fed up of apologizing. And they still have people's bodies. Those families have never been able to move on because there's a few people who are beheaded. They still have their bodies, and they can't move on because they need to say goodbye to those people.
Of course.
And this is something that happened until 1960. It didn't happen in the slave years. That was a long time ago, but this was up until 1960.
So Njambi, so have you having learned all this atrocities that went on and your dad's passing, have you now forgiven him for how he treated you?
Yeah. Pretty much. He had no chance. We are who we are because of those around us. If all you've ever known is brutality and violence and being brutalized, what can we expect from you?
So you talked about your friend who introduced you to comedy. You said you couldn't do it, then you started to write books. But what was the pivotal time for you when you decided, actually, I can write comedy? And what kind of comedy do you write? Do you use that as your platform to deal with the suffering that you've had, and then you make jokes about your father, or is it something completely different?
So that became my focus because by the time John, his name is John, by the time he advised me to write like a 1 hour show about it. I'd already been doing comedy for a while, but at the time I didn't know a lot of the stuff that I know now, so I just used to talk about underwear and and stuff. But then when he said to write a show about it, so that was the first one woman show I wrote about it. And that was obviously quite powerful. And since then I've always talked about my family history, because I think it is important to talk about your family history. So it actually, in a weird sort of way, is given myself meaning. And so I embarked on learning everything that I could about the African culture, particularly my tribe. It is very rich culture, mythology. So my book that I'm writing now, I'm writing another book, and this book is about the place where I was living with my mother. It was quite dysfunctional, and the people there are completely dysfunctional. But then it's also mixed with mythology and all of that stuff. So, but it's fiction. It's fiction. Yeah,
that sounds amazing.
So knowing how the British treated your people back in between 52 and 1960, you said that you're now married to an Englishman. An Englishman, I'm assuming he's Caucasian. How did that love come about, and did you trust him? Because knowing what the British done, and now you're, confronted with this British man who I'm assuming was professing undying love of you, was there any part of you that thought, well, I don't trust you because of how your people treated my people?
Well, by then my husband and I, we'd been married for a while, so I knew him before I found out all this.
Okay.
Yeah. And because all this is from the research, because when we are taken to boarding school, you just learn about with Winston Churchill and how amazing he was, and how the Queen of England and whatever. So this is the stuff that we learn at school. And then you start to do research and you think, oh my God. So did I get angry? Very angry. Because I could not reconcile, and he couldn't reconcile that his people did this to my people, and we struggled because he could not confront, he could not even face me because he was feeling as though he was responsible, and I was feeling angry with him because it was his people that did it, and so we struggled, and it was a struggle. We've come through it. Because I know he wasn't there, and he's not even want to go colonizing anyone. And ultimately we have children, and he's a very nice dad to my children, and he's very nice to me. And so he's.
What are your daughters?
Sorry?
How old are your daughters?
Oh, my daughters now are big girls. They're in their teens, and he's an amazing father to them, and he's been very supportive of my career. He very encouraging to me. In the early days when the girls were small, when I wanted to stay home and look after them, he said, that's fine, you stay home and look after them and I will support you. And when I wanted to do stuff and go do comedy, for the first 6 months he took me to gigs. And so he's not them. And but then when you're angry, you're angry,
Yeah. How has your story impacted in terms of your grown daughters, especially with what's going on now? How have they received your research and then you writing the book?
I'm very proud of my girls. They are feminists. They are sympathetic. They empathize with people who are marginalized. They're just decent human beings, and I'm just very proud of them. They don't know this because they're teenagers, and I'm sure they know. but they are very, they're very good girls.
Right. So you've done lots of shows with the comedy. How do you feel that the audience receives these these stories. Obviously it's delivered through, through comedy, but in terms of your interaction, your engagement, have you ever come up with any challenges in terms of sharing your story from an authentic place?
Generally, a lot of people who come to my shows, they are human, and this is the thing. I've seen so many white people at the end of my show, and they will come to me and they'll say, whatever happened to your people was not in my name. It was not in my name. And the people that gave me the strength to carry on writing this, and even my book, because a lot of publishers refuse to publish it.
Right.
But these people, so these are the people that gave me hope, because they were saying British people are not interested in such stories. And I was like, no, but how about the people who come to my shows? They're interested. They come. Yeah, they come to my shows, and they love my shows. And I can distinguish between, these people don't even know. A lot of them, these things were done in quiet, in silence. It's not, if you ask British people, the ordinary British people, do you want us to go and torture people from whatever, most people will say, no, we don't want you to do that on our behalf. And so so people do come and see my shows, and they're supportive of me. Obviously, I don't think everybody's going to be supportive of me. Some people who may not want to hear my stories, but that's my story. I can't change it. I didn't choose to be colonized. I didn't choose for Kenya to go through what we went through. All I can do is talk about my experiences.
But what you're doing is actually, hugely commendable. The fact that you're using your art to almost educate, inform, about the history, the context of your, the backdrop of the truth, not what they were actually taught in schools. And not only that, even as I said, in terms of the backdrop of what's happening in this crazy 2020, it's providing connections in terms of conversations. I imagine there's probably lots of great conversations that come about after your shows even.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people are only beginning to know what happened in Kenya. And I see sometimes people say, oh God, yeah, there's a girl that did a show about this, whatever. But these things are beginning to only come through. And it's nothing is hidden forever.
Absolutely.
Nothing is hidden forever. But you know what? It is what it is. There is a market. There are people who, who are buying my book, and people message me and they say, I read your book, and I was so touched, but at the same time feel embarrassed and ashamed for what we have done to people around the world. So I get all sorts of messages from people. And yeah, it's great that people are hearing it, because and I feel lucky, I feel fortunate, because I have a voice. My grandmother didn't have a voice. My mother didn't have a voice. My grandmother, she spent 70 years of her life being I will call it a slave, because that's what they did. They when the British came, they forced the women and girls to work for free. So she was engaged in free labor for most of her life. And if they didn't do the free labor or the digging trenches, they had to dig all these trenches and build roads. If they didn't do that, then they were beaten, and a lot of them were shot and killed. And so she was taken away from looking after her children, and there was no reward, nothing. And so it's I have a voice. My grandmother didn't have a voice.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for using your voice, because it's so important, and the fact that you've actually immortalized the whole backdrop in your book, in your personal story, is extremely powerful. So I really hope that it's brought you some healing as well.
It has. It brought me to a place that that I could never. My parents could never have explained this to me, because obviously for them, they are the recipient of these terrorists who have come to their country and they're terrorizing them. They don't actually understand the bigger picture. They don't understand about white supremacy and all of that stuff. They don't understand it. It's only when I was able to do research and to look at all of this, and how they say that Africans are inferior, smaller brains, and all of that bullshit. And all of that stuff. So just having an understanding about that, then I can begin to put things into context. But my family, they couldn't. My father didn't know that what he was doing is what he observed being done to others and what was done to him.
Yes.
Wow. It's a big one, isn't it?
Yes, Through the Leopard's Gaze is going to be, yeah, a very good read for myself. Definitely, I need to get myself a copy of that and everybody else. Wow, thank you for sharing that with us. Sonia, have you got anything else you wanted to elaborate on?
No, I mean, how can you add anything or take anything away from that? I just want to say thank you very much, Njambi, for allowing us to share that small snippet of your story. So if there's anybody out there and they're interested in getting your book, tell them how they can do that.
Well, they can support Jacaranda. My publisher's Jacaranda. It's owned by a Black woman, Valerie, because she realized that Black people are not being published. So she decided to publish Black authors. So this year in 2020, she published 20 authors, and mine was the first one. Because they don't publish Black people because they say Black people don't read and Black people are not interested in books and all of that stuff. So in 1 year, she published 20 Black authors.
Wow, amazing. Sounds like we need to get her one as well.
Valerie, she's inspirational.
Yeah.
So people who want to buy the book, they can buy directly from Jacaranda. But then also my book is in foils. It's in Waterstones. You can get it from W.H. Smith. You can get it from Amazon.
What's the book called, please?
It's called Through the Leopard's Gaze, and it's by me, Njambi McGrath.
Right. If there's anybody who wants to get you on social media, do you want to tell them what your social media handle is? I found you on Twitter.
Yes, so I'm on Twitter. I'm Njambi McGrath on Twitter. I am also the Hot African on Instagram. And also, and also I am on Facebook. So yeah.
Awesome. Right, well, and Njambi, I want to say thank you very much for coming on the show today, and I hope your book sales goes very well, and I hope your career as an actor stroke comedian multiplies 100-fold.
Thank you very much. So the book was optioned, so hopefully it will get turned into a drama series. So fingers crossed.
All right, for one of those, which channel is it?
Not yet. They're looking for a channel, but production house optioned it, so they're hoping to find a home for it. Basically, fingers crossed.
Awesome.
That's amazing. Yes, all fingers and toes. That's going to happen for you. It's absolutely going to happen for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you again. Thank you so much, Njambi.
Thank you for giving me a platform, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.